Hello again, everybody, and a very good evening to you all, anyone that's watching this either live or back on YouTube. Welcome to the next instalment of racing here in caterhamracer.com, particularly the 420R series. It is coming towards the end of this first season of competition. We've got this and 2 more weekends left to go before we come to a close of our first series. The 420Rs now head to what is said to by many as the fastest circuit in the UK. Unfortunately, thanks to Rockham's sad demise, it now reclaims that title. We are at the incredibly fast but incredibly treacherous Thruxton circuit in Hampshire. You can see speeds here in some of the fastest cars that ever go around here, around over 190 miles per hour. Not going quite quick that tonight, but it's certainly going to be fast and furious as well. This circuit has got a lot of different quirks to it in terms of its length and also in terms of its speed. 3.793 kilometres or 2.356 miles, 11 turns, and particularly lots of very fast corners and long straights where drivers will be flat out and full throttle in their quest to pick up victories once again. Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson once again on commentary here, and Chris also on camera once more. And Chris, this is a circuit that I'm sure a lot of drivers are looking forward to very much. This is where they really get to stretch the legs of the 2-litre Duratec engines in these Caterham 420Rs. If everyone stays in a pack and everyone's able to keep together, it hopefully should be as exhilarating as it was when the Caterhams raced here in real life 2 years ago. But if people get broken up a little bit, even if they start to pair off or go into groups of 3 or 4, it's still going to be, I'm sure, 2 very intense races, particularly up towards the front. Yeah,
it's got its own character, this circuit. It's very different from most tracks that we go to, really. It's really fast flowing corners, with very committed out the back of the track, and then you've got the 2 complexes. So you've got the chicane at Club, which is a big break from as high a speed as you're going to get in the UK, really, and then also the complex at Campbell, Cobb and Seagrave, which there's again lots of different lines that are possible around there, but only a few that are quick. But that won't stop them trying to go side by side. And certainly in the kind of practice we've been watching so far offline, if you try and dive up the inside of someone on the way into a corner, you're often compromised on the way out, so you might well lose it again. And if you get pushed out that train, as we've mentioned before, that could be you dropping down, 5, 6, 7 places.
And of course, on a circuit that is so fast, as you say, one small slip, and we were talking about this before the broadcast, it is a circuit where even if you so much as put half a wheel onto the grass, it has that ability because you're going so fast, and the momentum that you carry through these very fast corners, particularly out of the back of the circuit through Noble and Goodwood and Village, and the most famous corner of them all, the circuit being the incredibly fast but dangerous Church corner. You even so much as make a whisker of a mistake and it can spell game over for you instantaneously. So it's a circuit, I like it almost the similar vein as Castle Combe, where it looks like a fairly simple layout, but if you take liberties with it, and I'm sure as you would experience having raced there and many others alongside you 2 years ago, if you take liberties with it and mess around and think you can get away with 1 or 2 incidents, you can't, because when this circuit bites, it bites hard and it will bite for quite a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you say, the momentum you can carry off if just one wheel leaves the surface and goes out onto the grass. Yeah, you are not coming back in any way that's going to be reasonable to the race. So, yeah, absolutely, that's something to watch out for. But equally, lifting off the throttle because you're drifting out wide is equally damaging to your race potential, as everyone will start shuffling past you. So it's a real balancing act for the drivers. How brave are they going to be on that throttle? And how risk-reward basis here. One move could mean you move up into the lead, but equally you could drop down to 20th.
Yeah, so there's that balance they have to try and strike between speed and stability in terms of how much speed do you want to take through the fast corners, but at the same time how much risk you want to take to really kind of push yourself forward and keep with the pack. We're coming towards the end of practice and we're getting into our usual qualifying session. Quick reminder of where we've been so far this season in the 420R race series, and as you can see, we've already been to Silverstone at the start of the season, where it was a brace of wins for Harry Senior. Then he did it again at Snetterton 300 circuit. Then his run of wins was broken at Knockhill, where it was a double for Matthew Lewis, and he'd already picked up a podium at the previous meeting at Snetterton himself. And then Matthew got a 3rd victory, but he split honours for the first time in the series, 2 different drivers winning a race each on the same evening, because he shared a win with Steve McMaster as they both tackled the Zandvoort Grand Prix circuit, the scene of where we saw some epic racing in the Academy series, where most of these drivers also do double duty. If you didn't see that, we recommend go to the caterhamracer.com YouTube channel. Go and seek it out and go and watch it, because there was 2 sensational races where there was 2 close photo finishes. We've still got circuit, Brands Hatch Indy, where there's sure to be lots of bumping and boring and lots of close nose-to-tail racing, and then a driver's favourite to end the season in this series, which is Donington National, and that will be on the 5th of June. And speaking of the calendar, we should also mention there was some very good news yesterday, particularly from the BRSCC and from Caterham Motorsport, is that we do have a newly revised provisional 2020 calendar for Caterham Motorsport. We've got one for the Academy cars and one where the Road Sport 270R, 310R and Caterham 7 UK Championships apart from the 420R anymore, because they have now 10 UK stages through Motorsport UK, so congratulations to Caterham Motorsport for 10 that. And so all 4 of those championships will share the same calendar, and I should be able to very quickly hopefully bring it up on my screen, at least on my phone, so I can have a look through to read off where they're going to be heading to. So the season is set to start, of all places, which I'm actually quite excited about. We're actually going to be starting at Cadwell Park, and that's going to be on August 1st and 2nd for a double header. Then they head to Thruxton here, so they will return here on August 22nd and 23rd. Then they'll be going to Brands Hatch. This is Brands Hatch Indy, very much akin now to the end of the calendar, because it was matching up with what was the original 420 Caterham 7 UK calendar. So they'll be heading to Brands Hatch Indy as was originally scheduled on the 26th and 27th of September on the Indy circuit. Then they will head to Donington Park on October 17th and 18th, and then just to round things off, a one-day thrash at Snetterton on the 300 circuit for the last 2 rounds of Road Sport 270R, 310R and Caterham 7 UK Championship at Snetterton on the 31st of October. So hopefully not too many spooks on that day's race, of course, as it's the same day as Halloween. All jokes aside there, Chris, really good news to see that we've got a calendar for Caterham's back out once again, and some actually, from the circuits and dates available, a really decent 5-circuit roster there. Some very strong circuits. We've kept, I think, the 4 circuits from the second half of the season, but now we've got the added element of Cadwell thrown in, and also Snetterton thrown in at the end for good measure. So it hopefully should be a calendar that produces just as good racing as we hopefully see here tonight and have seen across the 2 series. Yeah,
fingers crossed that all comes to fruition. Yeah, great for people to get out to a new track, a new circuit. It's a long time since we've been to Cadwell, and it's an exciting track for drivers. As we just start the qualifying session, we're seeing everyone diving out the pits, so let's see who's going to get positioned.
So out they go for our qualifying session. Of course, it is as per normal. Everyone dashes out at the same time. No one's waiting around for track space. They're all heading out at once. We've got 22 cars out here this evening. And as they're heading out for their warm-up lap, just do a bit of housekeeping to check in with some of the drivers that we have. We have got 2 drivers making their debut in the 420R series, or at least in the series as a whole on the series for the first time. One driver you can expect to be towards the front of the field is going to be Steve Tozer. Now, he's a former Caterham Academy champion in real life. He was actually one of the fastest drivers out there. He's done a couple of test races beforehand, and according to Chris's reports, he was pretty much on the pace and at the front in every single one. He's racing in one of the DPR liveries. He's not associated with DPR, he's just racing because he quite likes that livery. So we'll watch out for him on track. The other driver who is also making a debut tonight is Richard Green, who, from what we understand, doesn't race a Caterham. He's very much like a couple of other drivers, and it's a bit like Guy Crawford, who doesn't race a Caterham, but he does own one and race one. And so his car is adorned in the same white livery with the black striping down the middle that he would have on his road car. So good to see them in the order. We should also touch on one or two ailments, shall we say, for some of the drivers who aren't here tonight, which Chris informed me of beforehand. We don't have, for the first time, we don't have
Chris Bates. Chris Bates has had to cry in sick because he's apparently got hay fever really badly. We have got Paul Fernie up in the race, but he is racing injured today with a bad knee, apparently an indoor training incident. And also we're missing Mark Lipitsky, for he's been signed off from sim racing for 5 weeks due to a hand injury. So who knew this simulator stuff was hard work on the human body?
Seems to be. It must be all the force feedback going through the wheel that's doing that. But of course, trigger finger some kind of pest is thrown into we reckon, but it's unfortunate they want all three of them on the sidelines, but hopefully they'll be able to be on the mend as quickly as possible so we can get them back out on the track. We're seeing here on board with David Rowe. He is fresh off his first ever victory in between the two series after he just picked Harry Senior to the flag in the second race at Sandport in the Academy series. He now has a victory. He's still racing for his 420R win, and he was fairly quick in the lap times that we've seen so far in practicing across the serve at this point in time. We were talking about lap times before we turned on air.
I think we've lost you there, Scott. Your volume went really low. I think you're back now.
Yes, so I think you were very low on my audio as well, but we'll carry on. So I was just moving into the point talking about David Rowe and also with the lap times that we have. We were talking about we expect most of kind of the drivers in around the bottom end of the top 10 and in the mid pack to be doing fairly decent mid to low 127s, but we're seeing a quick lap around here is anywhere around the mid to high 1 minute 26. Anyone that can lap in that sort of bracket is going to be in with a good shout for pole position, we reckon.
And we've already seen there Matthew Lewis put in a 26.3, so that is a spectacular time. Stephen Master Senior putting in sort of more like we're expecting to see, sort of mid 26s. But that 26.3 is a great result there for Matthew and a good early punt. As we see Harry Senior here drifting off wide. Like I said, he's now had to come off the throttle, and that's ruined his qualifying lap. Oh, and he's close to David there as he rejoins. So yeah, I think that's a great, banker lap for Matthew for sure for this pole position already.
We saw that early on in one of the qualifying sessions. I believe it was the 420Rs last time when we saw James Murphy put in a quick time early on, and he was in his first flying lap and was able to hold pole position for over half the session, which was quite interesting. But then as we got towards the end of it, when the circuit was getting a little bit faster, then some of the quicker times came through. This is going to be a key section of the circuit we just saw on there, Chris. The club chicanes, they head down the pit straight and start another lap, and that's David Rowe who pops up into second place. So that small little mistake from Harry Senior in front of him didn't really slow him up too much, and now it's his turn to give Harry Senior a bit of a tow. But the club chicane we think is going to be the key passing spot. You can pass down here into the complex at Campbell Cobb and Seagrave, but we think that club is going to be the key one because you're arriving at such a speed that you really have to hit your braking point, and it's such an easy complex, Chris, from, as you'll know again from personal experience having raced there, that it's so easy to miss your braking point, snatch a brake on the inside, and you can start to go off and skip the chicane. So getting the braking point and the right amount of braking before you start to lock the wheels is going to be absolutely crucial, particularly when you've got 2 or 3 Caterhams around you in a pack trying not to make any contact. Yeah,
again, it's another one of those sequences where the track is really, really wide, and it's very easy and very tempting to take more speed than you should through one of the earlier bends, but it just puts you offline for the later bends, and therefore it eventually costs you time. You may gain a few car lengths early doors, but then it all gets paid back to you on the next straight.
And the key crucial thing of that chicane, as we watch some of the cars flash past the screen in the qualifying session, as we now in the second half of it, with about 4 minutes and 20 still to go, is those large curves, because of course you can take advantage as much as you possibly can do, but if you use them a bit too much, it can come to your detriment if you sort of hop over them or hit them at a wrong angle. So that can really be something that could be a negative if you sort of, again, take liberties with the circuit in that manner too much. So curb use is going to have to be very much sort of toned back a bit, particularly on the circuit where they are so big and they can sort of throw you around a bit too much if you misuse them one too many times.
Yeah, we saw Harry Senior there take second place from David Rowe. Also seeing Chris Skillicon a bit further back, moving up into the top 10. Yeah, absolutely. If you hit the curb wrong, you are going to get sent in all sorts of weird directions and likely, get the rear wheels spinning and all sorts. So you have to use the curbs to be quick, but you must attack them at the right angle. And if you get that wrong, then they will bite you.
I don't disagree with that. I'm sure we might see 1 or 2 people getting bitten throughout the race weekend through both races if they sort of push it a little bit too hard. So looking back at the qualifying session, we've got 3 minutes and roughly 15 odd seconds to go. So Matthew Lewis then leads the way with a 1:26.369. We're watching Harry Senior as he's trying to chase after both Steve Tozer and David Rowe. Tozer's currently 5th fastest in his first qualifying session in the series, only half a second off, so good effort from Steve so far. Not the fastest that we've seen yet, but certainly picking up the pace as he goes along. Also in the mix is David Rowe, third fastest.
Interesting thing, Scott. I've got James Murphy, who's sat in the pits, but only down in 11th place. So I'm not sure what's going on there and why he's in the pits and not setting times. But let's watch this top group set times again, see whether they can make any improvements.
Across the line they go. Rowe does improve his time and remains third. I think Senior also has improved his. Has now gone to just over a tenth behind Matthew Lewis. So he's now on to the roughly, that's 4.78, I think. So that's 1:26.478, I reckon. Here's James Murphy, who has finally woken up, or must be listening to the stream, because he's jumped out of the pit lane, and now he quite conveniently has got himself a little bit of a toe behind his DPR team manager David Rowe here as they come up out of the Campbell Proceedings complex. And now they'll start to head towards the left-hander at Noble, and then this is where they start to head out towards the back of the circuit. In many cases, another key corner to really get right has to be Seagrave, because if you can get a good run off of Seagrave, it sets up pretty much how much speed you start to carry onto the back of the circuit when you head through those very fast corners that come up. It sets up the next section when you've got it's Noble, Goodwood, Village, and then eventually the run towards Church. So if you can manage to survive the first part of the complex at Campbell and Cobb, getting the right line and the right amount of speed through Seagrave can really set you up for a good run out through that fast back end of the circuit, because this is a track, Chris, I'm sure you'll agree, where every mile per hour you can salvage on these fast bits counts for quite a bit, more than you might think in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, definitely getting out of Seagrave and carrying all that speed into Noble. But Noble is a tricky corner all of its own, because if you get pushed out too wide, then you can't make the corner turn, you can't turn the car right properly for Goodwood, which is onto one of the longest bits of flat out track you're going to get. So yeah, absolutely Seagrave's important, but I would even say Noble is more important. The transition between Noble and Goodwood is absolutely vital for a time around here.
Can't disagree with that. One person who seems to have been getting it right in the last couple of laps that have come in include both Andy Steele and Chris Skillicorn. They've popped up to 6th and 8th respectively. One driver that's also been improving is Dominic Mansberger, the German driver who should be racing in this year's Caterham Academy this season. He's currently 7th fastest, so very much improvement from him over the server as a few of the drivers head through Allard and up towards that complex. So Matthew Lewis has the fastest time, but he's in pit lane, so he's decided he's had enough in this session as Dominic Mansberger just locks up a little bit into Campbell, then through Cobb, and then through the approach to Seagrave, where he just swings the car out as much as possible, uses a little bit of curb on the apex and lets it run out wide before he heads towards the left-hander at Noble. So Steve Tozer 4th fastest, but he's in pit lane. So are both Andy Steele and Chris Skillicorn. They're still out there trying to improve their times, are the likes of Senior and Rowe, McMaster, and also Mansberger. Guy Crawford's down in 9th place, so not quite the same speed he was showing at Zandvoort, but still up there in the top 10. So we see David Rowe hook it up as best he can over the curb, rattling the second part.
He's broken that lap, unfortunately. If it was on for a good one, then he absolutely ruined it through that club chicane. It's very easy to want to take a few extra meters on the brakes into club, but then that will actually force you out wide. So yeah, we've got a lot of people out in the pit lane or starting to pull into the pit lane. Harry Senior did just set a new fastest lap there, so he has increased that. In fact, he has taken that pole position at 26.2. What a great lap time that is. I don't think there's many people. McMaster maybe could try for a new lap, but he looks like he's just been out on the dust, so not many people that could actually set a time that's going to improve, but he's one of them, so let's watch him, see whether we can do anything.
Makes his way down towards the club chicane. He has got a car in front. I'm not sure if he would have gotten any kind of a tow from him in front. He may have been a little bit too far away, but he rattles over the curbs and heads towards the start and finish line. He's got to try and improve on a 1:26.761, and if he can or not, the answer is he does. Yes, he goes up to 3rd quickest, so he's now on to only 1.5 tenths away, so it's actually quite a decent lap. And if he was going a little wide, he was using all the track and just a little bit more that he could get away with. So McMaster goes up to 3rd fastest then as the session comes to a close, and we have our grid for race number 1 this evening. So once it resets on the screen, we'll be able to run you through who is where. So Harry Senior back on 4 once again. He takes pole position for tonight's first race, and he does so by less than a tenth of a second ahead of Matthew Lewis, about 84 thousandths of a second to be exact. Steve McMaster goes to 3rd fastest with his final flying lap of the session. He'll start on row 2 alongside David Rowe. Steve Tozer makes a welcome appearance in his first time in the 420R sim racing series. He will start 5th alongside Andy Steele. Good lap from Andy Steele and for Dominic Mansberger. Both of them will make up 6th and 7th. Then Chris Skillicorn, Guy Crawford and Mark Bennett will complete the top 10. 11th for Blair McConaughey, with James Murphy not as high as he'd like to be. Couldn't improve on those laps he did in the last couple of minutes of the session. He will start in 12th place with some work to do from the mid-pack. And Steve Arnell and Tom McEwing on the 7th row. James Fowler and Paul Fernerhuff, again, he's struggling with a bit with his slightly painful knees. He's got some work to do to try and move up from 16th. There's Mark Ryder and Andy Lees, then Alan Curtis and Richard Groom, who gets into the top 20 in his first weekend of racing. And I think we've got two more cars, which should be Mike Hilton and Ben Buckley. So 22 cars set to take the start of the first of two 15-minute races around the Thruxton circuit in Hampshire. This is the 5th evening of racing in the caterhamracer.com Caterham 420R series. So looking at the first few cars on the grid there, you can see towards the front the usual colours of the grey and red of Harry Senior, of car number 28. There he is on the grid. There next to him is the white and red striped Matthew Lewis on the front row of the grid. There is Steve McMaster in the William Smith livery for DPR. He's chosen that to run in 3rd. 4th place for David Rowe in his black and green machine. And then we've got Steve Tozer. He's in a DPR livery, but again, he's not DPR associated. He just likes that livery. He's in 5th position. And then it'll be 6th for Andy Steele, we believe, just behind him as well. So cars are just about lined up and we're almost getting set to get underway. Any thoughts on what we can expect here, Chris? Is it going to be? I expect there's going to be a bit of a melee down towards Campbell, Cobb and Seagrove for the first time. Hopefully not too much that it spoils the race a little bit, but it's going to be quite a bit of a skirmish in the first few corners. But I expect if there's a group of 4 or 5 that can start to pull away, they might become the main protagonists for the race victory.
Yeah, again, it's hard not to predict that. I mean, we've seen them do a brilliant job in the past, so maybe they can do it again. James Murphy starting 11th. Whatever he was trying to do in the pits, I think he was just waiting to get a bit of clean air with the fast guys. Didn't work for him, so he has got a lot of work to do pulling through from that mid-pack, somewhere he's not used to, and also we've seen him have incidents in the mid-pack. Anyway, lights are coming up.
So here we go then. Senior on pole, Lewis on the front row. These two are set to go to battle all over again, but who is going to come out on top in the first race of the evening here at Thruxton? Revs are up for race 1 here in Hampshire, and we're racing. Decent start from the front few rows. They all get away fairly cleanly. Let's see how they get through Campbell, Cobb and Seagrove, but through Allard for the first time, and already it is going to be Harry Senior who leads them through turn 1, but Matthew Lewis is already trying to attack down towards the complex. So Senior leads it with Matthew Lewis trying to look up the inside of 2nd place, but Senior sweeps to the apex very quickly to defend the place as they head through Campbell, through Cobb and through Seagrove for the first time. I'd say tentatively, most seem to have got through roughly trouble-free, although I can see the likes of Mark Ryder and Mike Hilton down towards the bottom of the field have dropped down a little bit. Also have Chris Skillicorn. I did speak too soon. There's 3 cars on the grass in the background coming towards Noble. So not as clean start as we wanted, but at least most of the field appears to have got away roughly trouble-free. As diving up the inside there for 4th was David Rowe and Steve Tozer, who tries to get him back on the undercut. And here's Senior who leads the way from Lewis and McMaster with Rowe and Tozer in tow. They're going side by side. So not entirely the cleanest of starts towards the back, Chris, but in the front, already the first 5 breaking away, trying to make a gap here.
Yeah, absolutely. Breakaway side by side, as we said. One of the people that was spinning there was James Murphy from that midfield, and I believe Mark Bennett as well. So 2 really quick drivers there that have now spun to sort of near the back of the field. Here coming up to the important braking zone here, David Rowe on the inside of the protectionist direction, so he should be all right to hold on to that as long as he doesn't lock up, which he doesn't. They all make it through the chicane on the first lap as well. This is all going far too well, Scott.
Something's bound to happen, I'm sure. I was very impressed at how much speed David Rowe carried through the final chicane, because he was a lot more confident than Steve Tozer was under brakes, and he was certainly catching up to the top 3 as quickly as possible. So, top 5 have broken away pretty swiftly. It is Senior who leads the way at the beginning of lap 2. Lewis is in 2nd place, then McMaster in 3rd, Rowe in 4th, and Steve Tozer going with them. Behind them, there's contact for 6th position. That is Dominic Mansberger driving up the inside of Andy Steele. Pushes him wide. He goes into the side of Guy Crawford, and around go the pair of them. Guy Crawford recovers over the grass, and now Big Steele's been hit again by somebody in the mid-pack. It might be possibly Richard Groom, if not... Yeah, looks like Richard Groom was involved in that as well. So, unfortunately, not quite as clean as it could have been for 6th position. Meanwhile, back at the front, up for 3rd place, muscling his way through, is David Rowe. He's not hanging around in the black and green Caterham, and he's straight onto the back of the top 2, as here comes Matthew Lewis, side by side on the run towards the daunting Church corner. He slots in front, and here here comes David Rowe. It is, goodness me, 3 abreast into Church Corner, and somehow David Rowe comes out on top of that for the moment. Lewis gets the undercut, Senior's in the tow with him, and it is 2x2 hurrah down towards the complex at Club Corner. They're going to go 4 abreast down towards the Club chicane. This is not going to end well, I'm sure. Under brakes up towards the chicane, all spitting flame from the exhaust. Sideways there for Harry Senior in some Ivan Muller-esque car control. Holds it in the lead somehow. Matthew Lewis in second place, David Rowe in third. Here comes Steve Tozer up the inside to try and get past Steve McMaster. And through all of that action in the last few corners, they crossed the line in pretty much exactly the same order they crossed it at the end of lap 1, Chris. How on earth did they do that?
I have no idea, and I have no idea how Harry held on to that. He got another tap from David Rowe there into the Club chicane. Was sideways all the way through the braking zone, but absolutely stellar car control there to hold it all together, and that actually upset David's race a little bit more. He got lost all his speed and went got caught up with the others. Matthew Lewis now trying to throw it down the inside. That's not a place you can really get it done without a lot of luck, so he's still going to follow Harry, but they've now got a gap back to the second squabbling pack of 3. David again now coming together, looking like with that was Steve McMaster, I think, and David Rowe, so that's cost Steve McMaster some time now.
It has, unfortunately, a little bit ambitious there. I'm not sure David Rowe, but it's probably a combination of Steve McMaster looking to go up the inside and not expecting David Rowe to turn in that much, but at the same time, Rowe probably not expecting McMaster to make that as they come out through Church Corner for the 3rd time. And as we've mentioned, the top 2 pulling away, but they're in their own private battle here. David Rowe's in somewhat no man's land in 3rd place, as is Steve Tozer. They're all spread out a little bit. Closest battle behind appears to be Mansberger versus Fowler, but we keep on looking at the battle for the lead. Is up the inside again, looked Matthew Lewis. He's trying to force Harry Senior to go a little too quick into the chicane, and actually looking on the exit, Lewis carries a lot of speed through there, so I think he forced Senior to take a bit too much speed into the first half of the chicane and then just dial it back so he was compromised a little more exiting onto the pit straight, and that's allowed Matthew Lewis to close back in.
Yeah, he did, but Harry was on the outside actually going into the chicane, which is very slippy out there in the simulator. As soon as you get offline, it gets very dusty very quickly, so he actually did a very good job to even manage to hold it on in that braking. As you say, it's all spread out a little bit more at the front, except for this lead 2, and you can see further back the battles are still continuing there, so we'll keep an eye on the gaps and bring you anything that looks like it's getting fruity.
Yeah, just absolutely right. The closest one as we keep tabs on is actually that scrap the stick between Fowler and Mansberger that has seen them change places. Also, we see Curtis and Buckley have changed spots, but Buckley's gone spinning by the looks of it. He's tumbling down the timing screen, down to 18th at the moment. We're looking back at Mansberger here, the German. He has got James Fowler to his outside. He was the runner-up in the Caterham Academy White Group, and he's got one of his playmates from that academy last year, Blair McConaughey, who was 2nd in the championship, so 3rd and 2nd in the academy, battling against one of the new breed of the academy drivers. And speaking of which, we've now got a little bit more fisticuffs between Matthew Lewis and Harry Senior, the pair of them side by side, so Lewis must have snuck up the inside either on the approach to or exiting Church, but it's Lewis who has to lead the cars into the club chicane, and he's closing up again now. It's Harry Senior's turn to apply the pressure. A little bit of a wiggle on the exit of club chicane as they fire it over the pit straight. And here is the view from Harry Senior. So up through the sequential gearbox through Allard, tried to carry a little more speed, but Matthew Lewis was a bit hesitant on the throttle through Allard. This has now put Senior into a prime position here. He's going to look to the outside line. Lewis will have to give him room. He'll have a bit of a sensor on his sim and his heads-up display to tell him exactly where the cars are around him. And a great undercut from Harry Senior around the outside at Cov for Seagrave. He's got the inside line for the right-hander and gets back through. That was a gutsy undercut, Chris. He managed to time that to perfection, set him up like a kipper, up the outside, inside from the next corner. Job done. He
didn't want to let go of that lead, does he? He wants to be in that lead at every single opportunity, and why not? It's certainly done him well so far in this series. So absolutely, yeah, we're not willing to give anything, and a great move around the outside there. Really tough again to get that all strung together, so good job.
Absolutely, and also looking behind, we need to also make a comment because Steve Toes up to 3rd place. He's managed to catch us. Here comes Lewis again, up the inside into Church Corner. Side by side is daring enough at any kind of corner. You put Church into the mix, where usually in a touring car you'd be doing about 130 miles an hour. Those two not quite as fast, but they're still motoring at full throttle on the back straight. But behind them, up to 3rd has come Steve Tozer, and would you believe it, Steve McMaster's come back to play. He's battling with David Rowe over 4th. As Senior looks down the outside again to hold the position. They sweep through the right, left, and then right again through Club Chicane. And a decent exit on the inside line for Lewis. They're going to go almost side by side across the pit straight to increase the lap. But incredibly, we've had all this battling, Chris, and very excitedly, we're only just hitting halfway. Steve McMaster pops in the fastest lap of the race, 1:26.259. He's caught up to this quartet now, I believe. He wants to get back in the mix.
Yeah, we've seen just a bit further back, Guy Crawford's making his way back up through the field. He's up into 7th already, so let's keep an eye on him. It looks like he might even be heading for James Fowler in 6th very shortly. But this lead battle is very intense, and like you say, it's looking like it's going to come together again by the end of this race. Steve Tozer has been extremely quick during sort of offline practice and through the pre-qualifying sessions, so we can expect to see him catch this gap up, and then we're going to be back into a 5-way battle for the lead.
I think that's another statement. I think with watching these three, we're not for long. We're not, because Steve Tozer's found the grass, and we talked about how deadly that was. If you get one wheel on there, you're out on it for a while. So kudos to Steve Tozer for getting it back on track so quickly. As now we watch the waltz in perfect harmony between positions between Matthew Lewis and Harry Senior. Behind them, David Rowe and Steve McMaster are going side to side for 3rd place. And just a moment ago, we saw the timing pylon on the left-hand side just lighting up with green and red arrows of people switching positions constantly. There's great 2-car battles all through the circuit, and interesting watching David Rowe carrying all that speed. It just shows there are 2 different lines, if you like, in many cases, through the last chicane at Thruxton. As back through into 3rd place has gone Steve McMaster. Just over 6 minutes to go as they head through Allard once again. And that brings Tozer back into play here. So it does seem as though with Steve Tozer, as we continue to watch 3rd and 4th and keep an eye on the leaders, that Steve Tozer seems to run pretty well in clear air. He doesn't take too long, Chris, to catch up back to the cars in front, mainly due to the fact that he is fairly quick in the first place, but also he's taking advantage of these guys continuously going back and forth, battling for position. He's only holding them up and bringing him closer as he keeps on reeling off the corners. Yeah,
he's, like I said, he is undeniable single lap pace, and he just probably a little bit race rusty, given that all these guys have been racing hammer and tong for the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks, and he's only been managing to get on a few times to get. So that's probably the reason we're seeing him sort of come up and down. You can see there's extra battles going on a little bit further down, but we've seen David Rowe again looking like he's going toe to toe with Steve McMaster here. So he's, that it's a solid race, and I bet they're both having a lot of fun.
Looks like it, and it may even be the case that on the fast bits they're trying to work together to try and close. So these two, there's been contact though between the 2 leaders. Onto the drive goes Matthew Lewis, and looks as though he's going to try and bound back on. He was lucky not to lose the car completely. It looks as though I think Steve got a little too much. He slides into the path of David Rowe. Through on the inside, hopping past goes to Steve McMaster into 2nd place. So David Rowe gets held up. Steve Tozer, I think, also might have got involved too. They come back onto the road, and after all of that happened in that sequence, Rowe is in 3rd place, Steve Tozer is still 4th, and they haven't fallen away too much from Steve McMaster. But the big loser there, Chris, was Matthew Lewis, and it looked as though Harry Senior might have just misjudged the move to get past him, didn't realise he was as close as he was, and a little bit of contact was all it took at that speed to send him spearing off onto the grass, and then from there it just started to go downhill, and he's already down to 9th place with his chance of victory completely evaporated.
When we picked up the feed, he was ultra defensive on the inside there, and it did just look like Harry's car just made a rear to front contact, and it just, because he was already on the edge of the grass, it just pinged him out into he had nowhere to go. But his ultra defensive line there, and Harry was just made some rear end contact. We saw that happen to Harry in the last race from David Rowe. I wonder whether there's a little bit of tit for tat, although I think that the 2 of them have been racing hard wheel to wheel. It's probably just a slight misjudgment.
Well, I'm sure there'll be some conversations about it afterwards in the Discord chat about what was happening there. What's happening now, though, are the 2 DPR liveried cars are going to battle. David Rowe, of course, DPR team manager, battling with Steve Tozer, who is not affiliated. As we say, he just likes the livery and runs in the usual livery that Ian Sparshot runs in real life. He's on the back of Rowe here for a final podium place, and I'm sure he would love to pick up a podium if he can on his first race. We're on board with Steve, and we couldn't see David Rowe because he's on his outside, and now as they head through Allard Corner, he's behind him, because into 3rd place goes Steve, with Rowe trying to get him back on the exit to look round the outside. We can draw alongside. He'll be in the perfect position to get through for Campbell, because it's a right-hander for the next corner. Rowe obligingly takes the position back again for the moment, but Tozer tries to go toe-to-toe with him once more. And again, these two keep on scrapping, Steve McMaster will start to pull away and start to chase after, well, attempt to chase after Harry Senior, who already is over 2.5 seconds up the road, probably trying to concentrate as much as he can here with 2.5 minutes to go, because he knows even in the lead and on your own, you can make one small slip up if you get a little bit complacent out in the lead, and that could possibly see the rest of the cars behind start to close in and gain so much time behind you.
Yeah, one locked wheel or one time going offline where at the wrong time, it can be the end of a race winning gap that he's got now. Again, we've got Steve Tozer going up the inside of David. They've probably swapped 3 times in this lap already. And again, David Rose up the inside. Steve was trying to protect the inside but couldn't cover it off quick enough. So they're now going to be side by side as they come up into the complex once more.
I think that was asking for trouble if they kept on banging wheels like that, and I think they realised pretty quickly, the more we carry this on, we could be both out of the podium place. So they decided to fall back into line, and Steve Tozer getting a little crossed up as he rocked over the curb in the first part of the club chicane, and doing so on the exits. He's lost quite a bit of time now. He's going to have to try and use the clear air behind him to try and close in. That said, we're only going to have another 2 laps or so, because the timer has gone past 1 3/4 minutes, coming up to 1.5 minutes. With a couple of laps to go. Here's Steve McMaster in second place, and he's coming up to a lapped car, either that or... No, he's not, sorry, that is Harry Senior. I really didn't realise he got back as close as he had. The gap is down to 1.8 seconds in clear air now, but I do think, despite all the fight, despite him starting to close in now, all the battling and all the mistakes behind Harry Senior might just give him enough of a gap in this clear air to hold on to the lead, unless something unthinkable happens in the lead that Senior's it falls foul to.
Yeah, he'll be concentrating on absolutely nailing all his braking points, lines, braking, all those things, just being a little bit more cautious than he needs. He's got 1.8 seconds to spare. As we watch Matthew Lewis just making his way, he's made his way back up to 6th place. I think he was down to about 9th at one point, so a good recovery drive for Matthew. Again, he'll be within firing range of the top when we get to the start of the second race.
Yeah, the stage where he is, he will start 6th on the 3rd row. Of course, he has just got past, by the looks of it, both Mark Bennett and Paul Fernerhuff, and his next target would be, if he had enough time, James Fowler, but he is 4 seconds back from the man in 5th position. Good drive from James Fowler up in 5th position. It's a good strong performance from him, from the man who finished 3rd in the Academy last year, and beating on track the man who finished ahead of him in the points in 2nd place, Blair McConaughey, who's down in 11th place, and he's trying to chase after Andy Steele for that final top 10 spot. Into the final lap for this first Thruxton race. It's been anything but dull. It's been very eventful in the first half of the race, but the second half in the last couple of laps just calming down a little bit now as they start to settle into their gaps. And McMaster is making very slight inroads on Senior's lead, but just not enough and not quickly enough to make through. He has got the gap down to less than 1.5 seconds though, so he is certainly pushing on. Certainly the pace that McMaster has in the 420R is undeniable, but it does look as though, Chris, as we come towards the second half of the last lap, looks as though Senior is possibly has a little too much for him, despite him getting close. And I think this looks to be Senior's race to lose with just a few corners left. Yeah,
I think I'd call it like that right now. Again, he's on the downhill stretch, so he could probably push it from here. I think that's a bit pushing that analogy a little bit, but nevertheless, he has made some ground back, but not enough to be threatening as we come down the back straight for the final time.
So up Woodham Hill towards the club chicane for the final time. He's won 4 times in this series already. He's about to make it 5 as he heads into the club chicane. He did have to survive some attacks from Matthew Lewis. There was a little bit of tit-for-tat and some contact. Might be talked about afterwards, but right now is all that matters. He'll head to the checkered flag. It is win number 5 in the 420R series for Harry Senior. He takes the checkered flag in race 1. McMaster picks up 2nd. David Rowe will round out the podium in 3rd. Steve Tozer might have wished for a little bit more, but 4th place on his first race shouldn't be sniffed at at all. Great result for Steve on his debut. James Fowler with a top 5. Well done to him for a quiet but very solid drive. Matthew Lewis will wish for what could have been in 6th position. I'm sure he will feel a little bit aggrieved after the contact with Senior. Some also good performances in the bottom of the top 10. 7th place for Paul Fernerhuff, particularly with his knee injury, so well done to him. 8th place for Mark Bennett. 9th for Dominic Mansberger, who is improving all the time, our 2020 Academy driver. 10th for Blair McConaughey. And then it's 11th for Andy Steele from Alan Curtis. Guy Crawford, who again was running very strongly early on, but had the mistake and slipped down to 13th. Tom McEwing 14th. Steve Arnell will be disappointed as well in 15th place. Then Richard Groom, Chris Skillicorn, Mike Hilton. And we're just waiting for Andy Lees and Ben Buckley. And then James Murphy looked as though on the screen it showed he escaped back to the pit, so he will be out on track, but it looks like he's already finished. And unfortunately, we had Mark Ryder in the pit lane as well, so he hit some strife in that race. So, reminder of the result then, and it was a win by almost a second for Harry Senior, his 5th in the 420R series, and he wins ahead of Steve McMaster in 2nd place. He was looking good in the last couple of laps pace-wise, so if he stays a little bit closer on the front row, it could be McMaster's race to lose if it plays out that way. 3rd for David Rowe, with another podium for the DPR team boss. Steve Tozer with a 4th on his debut. James Fowler, I'm sure, with a personal best for him. Matthew Lewis, again, we disappointed with 6th, but he's got a chance to rebound in race 2. And Paul Fernerhoff, Mark Bennett, Dominic Mansperger, not Sperger, I got told about that before the broadcast, and Blair McConaughey rounding out the top 10. Then it's Andy Steele, Alan Curtis, Guy Crawford, Tom McEwing, Steve Arnell, then Groom, Skillicorn, Hilton, Lees and Buckley. And the last 2 finishers that we had on the screen are James Murphy and Mark Ryder. So, a few talking points there from that first race as we get set for race number 2 straight away. I guess one of the main talking points is that contact between Senior and Lewis. And as I mentioned in that first race, there's probably going to be words about it afterwards, but I'm sure both drivers will have their own viewpoint. But from what we saw of it, very defensive driving there from Matthew Lewis, which he's entitled to do, but at the same time, I think a bit of a misjudgment there on Senior's part as to how close he really was and exactly where Lewis was in respect to his car.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see the sort of build up to it, but every time Matthew seemed to have the extra speed through Church, which meant he could take the speed out onto the back straight. But it looked like that time round Harry was right on his tail, and they were just, like say, just right on the edge. Matthew absolutely not wanting to give any inch for him to make room for Harry up the inside, but it looked like, yeah, a little misjudge, maybe a little bit of the toe kicking in and therefore giving him a bit extra speed, or you could even get a bit of a lag spike sometimes to give them the fair dues when you're running that close, and it really was toe to toe, wheel to wheel between the whole top 5 there. So, you know, it's quite hard to manage that for the whole 15 minutes, and I thought they did well to get that far. Let's hope that they can have go the full 15 minutes this time round.
Well, I have just seen a little comment pop up from Harry Senior in this Discord chat, and he has said he believes either Matthew or him had a lag spike, which he suddenly started slowing down near where the braking zone was, and he has given his apologies for the contact, because he does rightly point out they were having an awesome race up to that point. So it looks as though it was an innocent incident between the two of them, and of course I never doubted the fact that Harry meant no harm by that. I looked as though it wasn't something that he intended to do, as I would never think of such. But anyway, getting into the second race, and we see the grid all lined up already. Now, Senior on pole position once again. Crucial bit is he's got a different car starting alongside him. Senior back in 6th. Then in between, you have got the likes of David Rowe and also in there as well, Steve Tozer. So key points to look out for, of course, seeing if Senior can get himself away from the front row and make it 2 from 2, his 6th win. If McMaster can take his 2nd in as many weekends, if either Rowe or Tozer can pick up a victory from the 2nd row of the grid, Lewis will be one to watch from row 3. And of course, the one to watch again, once more from the back of the grid, is going to be James Murphy, starting on the rear in 21st. And it's quite akin to what happened in race 1 in 2018 in the Road Sport, isn't it? Or where he started from the back of the grid, had to charge his way through, and he picked up 3rd that day. So do you reckon that's mainly the drivers we need to expect to make some progress up through the order? I
think we should keep an eye, especially if there's some incident first few laps. Obviously, he got caught up in that incident being mid-pack last time. Anyway, the lights are coming up. I'm sure he'll hope for a cleaner first lap this time.
Fingers crossed we do get that. Senior on the left on pole position at the front of the grid. The orange car of Steve McMaster alongside him on the front row. Red lights are up, and so are the reps for race number 2 at Thruxton. They go out. It's a nice clean start from everyone getting away so far. Nice equal launch on the first few rows. They head into Allard for the first time, and they appear into shot with Senior a few car lengths clear already. So a good launch from the front row of the grid from pole for Harry Senior. McMaster is in 2nd place from Rowe in 3rd. Tozer in 4th place, but he's going toe-to-toe with David Rowe under braking, and up one spot already is Matthew Lewis. He's got past James Fowler at the start. One car set with a stripe in the background. That might be Dominic Mansperger going downwards, as is also Guy Crawford. And also looks like Richard Groom and Chris Skillicorn and Mark Ryder's be caught up in that as well. James Murphy, again, looks as though he made a decent start initially, and he's now dropped down to, unfortunately, 19th position. So not the start he was hoping for, but certainly dropping down the field. Now, as they come out onto the back end of the circuit, through the right-hander up towards Church for the first time, it is Senior who leads only by 0.3 of a second from Steve McMaster. Steve Tozer's in 3rd place, then Matthew Lewis, and David Rowe in 5th place, and also in there too are both James Fowler and Mark Bennett. So a a 7-car train already started to break away, and lots of interesting battles brewing here on this opening first lap.
Yeah, absolutely. It was Dominic Mansberger who spun the rear end coming out of Campbell, and that just caused a chain reaction as we get onto the braking zone into the club chicane. Everyone looks like they've made it through this time. Hopefully they'll be taking it easy on this first few laps. But yeah, so Mansberger then caused it. We've got a bit of a pile up from behind as well. It looks like Steve Tozer's car was being a bit bounced around there.
Well, let's see if he can cope with that as they go on to the second lap, and see if we can make a few more positions up and as the race goes on. So Senior leads the way as, there's more contact behind. That was James Fowler and Steve Tozer, I think, coming together. Steve Tozer went back onto the road, and Fowler was the one that was spinning. Now they headed to the Campbell Cobb and Seagrave complex, and the order they've run is Blair McConaughey in 5th position. It's Tozer now 6th, but he's under attack from Mark Bennett. Paul Fernerhuff is in there as well, as is also Andy Steele. So they turn their way out of Seagrave and up towards Noble for the second time. There's a couple of tracks on the inside of the grass where a couple of the cars went spinning on the opening lap, as now we see Steve Tozer trying to retaliate by going round the outside at Noble. That's not an easy passing spot to try and get through, so I commend Steve for trying to attempt that one. Behind them though, we see Mark Bennett going wheel to wheel with Paul Fernerhuff, and that's over 8th position as they turn out onto the back of the circuit and make the run towards Church once more. Tozer just dipping inside into Church Corner, tries to go through, but he's misjudged it. He's sideways in the middle of Church Corner. Everyone behind stands on the anchors and checks up. I'm amazed, Chris, that everyone had the foresight to see that happening. No contact from anyone else, and nobody going off the road. That was a lot of good driving from everyone behind not to make contact with an almost very 90-degree sideways Tozer at one of the fastest parts of the circuit.
Exactly, that Tozer just caught side by side with the car he was for, Blair McConaughey. Looks like he's having a really tricky race at the moment, Steve Tozer. He's been spun again, I think, and I'm not sure that his car is fully connected at the moment. He seems to be jumping in and out, and that might be what's causing most of his problems at this point. But yeah, absolutely. I guess the cars around him saw a sideways car through Church, and that is never a good sight. The best thing to do is back out, wait for your opportunity again, and that's what they did. So good job.
Imagine everyone else behind that was braking had their eyes on stalks watching that happen, thinking, oh goodness me, please don't hit me. So looks as though the car got caught up with at the chicane appears to be Mark Bennett, but sadly he's dropped down to 17th, so he's got some work to do to rebuild himself and get himself possibly back nearer the top 10. Here's our leading trio up through the right hand at Goodwood and on the approach towards the Kinker Village. It is Senior who leads the way. But the question now is for how much longer, as here comes Steve McMaster with Matthew Lewis in tow. They're both running on the outside line towards Church Corner. Passing on the outside of Church is almost unheard of. Passing on the inside, meanwhile, isn't so unheard of, as up the inside for second place goes Matthew Lewis, and he's immediately on the toe of Harry Senior. He wants a little bit of friendly revenge for when they made contact before. McMaster's on the inside of Lewis. They're almost 3 abreast. Lewis thought about going to the inside of Senior, saw the orange car on the inside of him, decided not quite. Now McMaster goes too deep and he fires Harry Senior onto the grass and into the barriers. That's crucial. Harry Senior, race 1 winner, off into the barriers as Matthew Lewis puts himself 2 wheels in the air on the exit. But crucially, I'm not sure McMaster misjudged where Harry Senior was, or particularly where his braking point was, but contact with Senior, and he's down to 3rd place, possibly now in the clutches of Rowan McConaughey and Fernerhuff behind.
I'm going to call that the other way, I'm afraid, Scott. It's Steve McMaster as well, up the inside and on the brakes as he should be. I don't think Harry knew that he was there. So Steve McMaster took out all the speed he needed from Church, where the other two went side by side, and therefore he had that run. But I don't think Harry realised it and turned into him on the braking zone.
Fair enough. I'm happy to stand corrected on that side. It's how I saw it initially, but you are the racing driver, so you are very much the expert compared to me. So I'll happily listen to your judgment on that side. Watching the leaders now, Matthew Lewis having a really good attack here through Campbell Cobb and Seagrave, and he's now underneath the rear of the roll cage of Steve McMaster as they head through Goodwood, and now side by side again. Here comes Matthew Lewis. He did this a lap ago. He's going forward again and sweeps in front before they hit the brakes for the right-hander at Church. So back into the lead goes Lewis, but McMaster will tuck in to the slipstream, running down towards the club chicane once more. He'll take the outside line this time. Lewis feels he has to go ultra defensive before sweeping back across, knowing that he's fairly safe to hit the brakes as McMaster closes in a little more. But he's maybe just biding his time a little bit in these next few corners to possibly make an attack. Now for Harry Senior, he's now already back up to 3rd place. He's now embroiled in the scrap for the final podium place with both David Rowe and Blair McConaughey. So Blair's been making some decent progress up through the melee just at the bottom of the top 10 on the first lap, and he's up to P5 and keeping these two in check. The rest of the top 10 shows us Paul Fernerhuth in 6th and James Fowler and Andy Steele, Guy Crawford and Steve Tozer, who's on the recovery trail. He's back in 10th position.
Oh, a little time to take a little breather, but actually the racing hasn't relented yet as David shoves it up the inside going through Seagrave. Again, not a place you'd normally get away with it, and as he goes he's dropped back. So Harry absolutely on the comeback trail, looking to, can he make that gap back up? Looks like it's probably a bit out of reach. Those two have probably managed the gap out front, but you never know with a driver who wants to go and get it, whether he could do something very special. Now David Rowe coming under attack from Blair McConaughey, who is right in his wheel tracks down this fast back straight. We've seen lots of cars going up the inside here, but it just costs them on the exit. So that even though they gain on the inside as he goes side by side again through Church, again it's not so you can see how David's struggling on the dirt, bringing Paul Fernerhuth straight into action there. He's got a nice run going down the front straight up into the club chicane. He looks like he's going to be passed before we even get onto the brakes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. David Rowe got really sideways on the exit, getting out onto the dirty part of the circuit on the outside, off the racing line, and that not only cost him a chance to hold on to what was 4th position, it also cost him 5th at the same time, at his expense to Paul Fernerhuth. So Rowe down to 6th position as we hit halfway in the next few seconds in this second race, and Rowe tries to come back at Fernerhuth through Allard Corner, through the long right-hander that takes him back towards this curving left towards the complex, and senior David Rowe might possibly look for the outside line to get the inside for Cobb. Goes through Campbell round the outside of Paul Fernerhuth, just simply drives around him. So confidence and grip there for David Rowe on the outside line to get himself back into the top 5. Not too far away there is James Fowler. He picked up 5th position in race 1 moments ago at the end of that race. Just quickly looking back at the front on the timing pylon, 0.4 of a second or so between Matthew Lewis and Steve McMaster. Here they are, exiting through Goodwood, through the Kingcombe Village, and on that approach towards Church Corner. And it looks as though at the moment, just it through Church here, trying to get a good run through this right-hander to carry the speed through the corner, Chris. And he's not tucked up right underneath Matthew Lewis. I think he's maybe just sort of biding his time a little bit, because he realises if he keeps on battling and taking risks, it might come back to bite him a few corners later. So just sitting back a little bit, but he's keeping Matthew Lewis honest, staying in his slipstream and keeping under the rear of his roll cage, just to make sure that he doesn't let up too much and stays with him when the time is right to make the move. Yeah,
we've seen, I don't know what Matthew Lewis does out the exit of Goodwood, but he seems to carry more speed than anyone else through that section and all the way through Church. And now that he's not got someone going side by side with him, he's actually could carry that speed then out through Church. So he's gained that little bit of ground, although it looks relatively calm, but it's only 0.3 of a second. It's nothing, is it?
No, especially not in Caterham racing, where you're more used to, it might be a lot in Caterham, because we're normally used to hundredths and thousandths of a second deciding gaps and race finishes, as we did in the Academy at Zandvoort back on Friday. Looking back at David Rowe, who has got 2 drivers going toe-to-toe behind him, that's Paul Fernerhuth and James Fowler scrapping over what is 6th position. Fernerhuth in the multicoloured car is holding on to P6, but Fowler wants it in 7th place there in the silver-coloured car as they start to follow. Here is James's view. He's thinking about a move into Noble. In fact, not just thinking about it, he's going for it. 2 wheels over the curb, a little bit of understeer on the exit, but he does hold on. And impressive. Oh, I thought it was impressive he got past, but not quite. Fernerhuth dives it back up the inside and throws it back and says, "Not quite finished yet, James. Have some of that." And he throws it to the inside to get back through. Side by side again on the sprint towards Church Corner. Fernerhuth has track position, but Fowler might carry more speed through unless he can get the undercut, which he looks for, and it might be successful. They go out of Church Corner through this curving left-hander of Brooklands and up Woodham Hill towards the club chicane again. And this time it's advantage Fowler. He's on the inside line with Fernerhuth to his outside. Into the complex they go, down through the gears, and Fowler carries quite a bit of speed in. They both take the alternating lines. It seems as though that Fowler was interested in carrying more speed into the first half of the complex, whereas Fernerhuth wanted to set himself up for the exit, and that's where he's got himself back up the inside. So a handy little battle here that's going back and forth. It seems to be the closest battle we have on track at the moment, but apart from that, the lead battle is stabilised still at 0.4 of a second. But I figure maybe towards the last couple of laps, Chris, those leading cars, as Fowler and Fernerhuth, are still not finished. I suspect maybe they're sort of working together a little bit to pull away from the likes of Senior and McConaughey, to just put the gap by another second or so before they start duelling in the last couple of laps.
Yeah, I don't think Steve McMaster's finished. He is he's one of our cerebral drivers, so he's definitely using his head, whereas others sometimes don't. But whether you give them an inch, you take them out. So Matthew Lewis was wide there. We talked earlier about if you get off that dirt, you've got to come off the throttle. Perfect illustration of it there. So McMaster, as we were talking about it, is back through into the lead, but that may be a bit too soon with 3 minutes 45 still to go.
And if you watch carefully, Lewis let him through because he knew exactly what was going to happen. He backed off for the better run through Church Corner to get the faster exit speed, then the sprint down towards Club Corner. That was actually smart driving from Matthew Lewis as well as Steve McMaster. And it's paid off because back up the inside into the lead goes Matthew Lewis. And I saw that happening. He backed off. And I thought that's not just Steve McMaster carrying more speed. Lewis saw the attack coming, let him through, got the toe on the exit and the better momentum exiting Church Corner, up the hill and back in there. So you say Steve McMaster's quite cerebral, Chris, but it looks like Matthew Lewis might be intellectually on the track at least. Quite a match for Steve here. Two very evenly matched drivers, both intellectually on the track in terms of racecraft and also in their speed.
Yeah, that's so good driving all round there, really, wasn't it? So yeah, he did absolutely. He lifted off because he had to, because of the dirt. Decided he wasn't going to push it, let the space happen. Steve was a bit compromised, and therefore he could carry that speed up into the chicane and made it back through again. So yeah, Matthew Lewis again. We've seen it plenty of times before. He will not give up a place knowingly. He will immediately fight back as the best opportunity to get back. He wants to be in front. If you want to have a bit of a relax, you can sit behind him for a bit.
That's exactly what McMaster's doing at the moment. I look at the time and there's on my screen 2.5 minutes to go. So I suspect we're going to get at the end of this just about enough time for 2 more laps, I reckon. I think we'll have roughly around about less than 30 seconds when they cross the line to start the last lap. They've still got 2 more to go and the finish of this one. McMaster's not quite as close this time by. Of course, remember a lap ago they were exiting Church Corner practically side by side and it was Lewis who had the advantage. He still does on the run towards Club Corner. Just under brakes, McMaster starts to close in. Further back we see Steve Tozer, who's playing sort of a bit of a battle here with Guy Crawford, and it's Crawford who's got the advantage here, but Tozer just ducking into the slipstream as they head up Woodham Hill towards Club to try and stay with them as best he can. And McMaster on the screen I can see he's got back past Lewis, so what's happened there? And the lap time was what, 3 seconds slower, so just as
I cut away, Scott, I think he must have had an incident through the chicane, whether he outbraked himself or whether he got on the accelerator too early, but it definitely looks like McMaster is now quite dominantly in the lead in 3.5 seconds.
Now, I don't want to speculate things that we haven't seen, but that suggests possibly McMaster was fairly close, but does it maybe suggest either Lewis carried too much speed and McMaster got caught up and possibly slipped past while he was having a slide, or we don't know if there was contact or anything. Like, it didn't look as though McMaster was close enough to make any, so it might suggest that Lewis maybe caused it on his own. Do you think, maybe?
That's what I'm going to call at this point, just given that we had that gap when they were disappearing off down the back straight, and it's so easy to lock a wheel up into that club, and if you go out wide onto the dirt, it's just absolutely, you cannot get the car back turned in.
Yeah, it does look as though the fact that McMaster has kept his pace up rather than sort of being only 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds in front. He's 3.2 ahead at the moment. Suggests that maybe it was all of his own making. Matthew Lewis as they head back towards the complex. So let's see what he can do at the club chicane and see if he's possibly learnt his lesson if he did go a little wide in there. Harry Senior's not too far away. He's just over a second though, but he'd have to try and really push it on this last lap to get through. And my time prediction was just about right, less than 30 seconds as they cross the line to start the final lap. And on that lap you can see that McMaster was a full over half a second quicker than Lewis on that lap. And Senior, meanwhile, did a 1:26.7, so he was much quicker. So, on to the last lap here at Thruxton for this evening. And fairly eventful race we've had. The race 1 was arguably more eventful, but certainly had its moments here in race 2, as Senior continues to chase after Matthew Lewis right until the checkered flag. Blair McConaughey's run pretty strong in 4th place. That will be one of his best finishes in the caterhamracer.com series, across Academy and 420R. And then David Rowe in P5. He's a little bit distant in this race. He's been rather quiet in many cases. And also, I've noticed for James Murphy, sadly, he didn't make the race. So, very much on James Murphy's part, Chris, a night he'd rather forget.
Yeah, he was saying his car had seemed to have lost power after that first race. So, some technical issues there, it sounds like, for him coming out of race 1 and into race 2. So, yeah, he's pulled back into the pits. Looks like Harry Senior's not going to quite make it, doesn't it? But he's done a pretty amazing fight back, even to get within contention and certainly to get back on that podium.
And Matthew Lewis has brought the gap down by another second on this lap so far, but He is going to be too little too late. There's a lapped car on the inside there, so hopefully he doesn't cause too much trouble for the cars behind. But no trouble whatsoever for this man. Steve McMaster exits the club chicane for the final time, and he picks up his second win in as many meetings. He wins race 2 at Thruxton here to a fantastic drive in many cases. Look at that, very close at the line though. Harry Senior really closed in on the back of Matthew Lewis at the final chicane, and he finishes right underneath him on his rear wing, on the tail, to pick up 3rd place behind Lewis. 4th for Blair McConaughey, he'll be very pleased with that, his personal best in 420Rs. 5th for David Rowe, a bit disappointed I'm sure, but he'll get a top 5 nonetheless. James Fowler picks up 6th. Paul Fernhoff 7th. Again, Steve Tozer, lots of promise, but couldn't quite match it in the second race after 1 or 2 mistakes. He ends up in 8th. Guy Crawford and Andy Steele. The rest of the field come pouring through with Alan Curtis, Ben Buckley. Not bad for Ben Buckley, actually. He was towards the rear in the first race and moved his way up through the field. 13th for Mike Hilton. 14th place for Mark Ryder. Then Steve Arnell and Tom McEwing. Steve Arnell might be a bit disappointed outside the top 10. He might have expected more from tonight. And then we've still got Richard Groom and Andy Lees to come across the line. And then our last finisher should be Mark Bennett, because Mansberger, Skillicorn and Murphy sadly had to retire from this second race and could not make the distance. So, confirmation of the result for race number 2, and it is Steve McMaster who takes his second caterhamracer.com 420R series victory. Matthew Lewis in second place, although he might have felt as though he could have possibly made it a victory in either race, but sadly fortunes did not go his way too many cases, but he still picked up some strong results. Harry Senior in 3rd place. Again, he might have felt he could have done more. Now McConaughey will be delighted with 4th place, I'm sure. David Rowe, maybe not so much with 5th, but still in the top 5 nonetheless. And it's James Fowler, Paul Fernhoff and Steve Tozer. Lots of promise for him, so watch out for him next time with 420Rs. Guy Crawford and Andy Steele complete the top 10. Then quickly we have Alan Curtis, followed by Ben Buckley, Mike Hilton, Mark Ryder and Steve Arnell, with McEwing and Groom, Lees, Bennett were the last finishers, because we lost Dominique Mansberger as well as Chris Skillicorn and James Murphy. Well, that was a little bit exhausting, but very exhilarating racing, as Thruxton always tends to deliver, Chris. And 1 or 2 hairy moments out there between 1 or 2 drivers, so I'm sure there'll be some conversations afterwards in whatever context. But on the whole, Thruxton certainly promised some exciting racing and some on-the-edge drama. And I think it certainly delivered in more than one sense. It was very entertaining from start to finish. And again, another weekend when we have 2 different winners on the same night, which it just shows as though as more drivers start to come in and keep on improving in terms of the existing drivers, it's getting more and more competitive with only just 2 meetings left to go.
Yeah, it was, so the cars were all on their edge, you know, going around this track. They always are around Thruxton, and the driving was on its edge as well, wasn't it? There was some close driving, sometimes a little bit too close for comfort, a little bit angry driving at times, I'd say. You know, you sometimes get that feeling in a race where it's just, we saw Harry coming back through the field after being mistreated a couple of times, and we also saw Matthew Lewis get fired out that first race from maybe a bit of a lag spike. But equally, we saw some great battles as well. So, you know, what more do you want from an evening's racing? A bit of incident and some really great racing to go with it.
I think we had to liken tonight's driving to a movie title. I think Drive Angry is certainly an appropriate title, I think, considering that everything that went on at the front and then mid-pack and everything in between. I'm happy for you to have a chat to whoever you want driver-wise. You're free to drag in who's available. I'm sure there'll be 1 or 2 drivers that may or may not, depending on their fortunes, talk about what happened. But by all means, see who you can find, and let's see if we can have a chat with anyone who's around, possibly. I'm
going to see if we can drag Steve McMaster in. I don't know if he's got voice. Steve, can you hear us?
I can indeed. How you doing?
Congratulations on that, another win in this championship. You seem to get on with these 420s all right.
Yeah, I find the 420s easier than the Academy cars, to be honest with you. There's so much grip. I mean, when they start to slide, they go really quickly, and they're a bit less predictable than the Academy cars, but they're such great fun to drive.
And how was the race for you? It looked like you were sort of sitting back in that second race, waiting for a mistake to happen. We didn't see what happened to Matthew into the club chicane, so I wonder if you could fill us in on that.
Yeah, it was one of those typical Thruxton things. Me up the inside. He ran on a little bit long and clattered the curbs on the left-hand side of it, on the left part of the chicane, and then was just really slow out of it, and then really, really slow all the way down the straight. So I think I put 2 seconds on him, just there. It's a real shame because that was going to be a proper ding dong into the last chicane on the last lap.
Yeah, it was certainly building up to be a great race. So maybe he got a cut penalty and then needed to ease off to get rid of that, so he didn't have to do a drive-through. We didn't, again, race one. How did that go for you? Again, it looked like it started off fairly clean, but then things got a little bit fraught about a few laps in.
Yeah, I'm not sure who it was, but again, it was one of those side by side through the first really quick long left out at the back, and I was up the inside. He turned in on me, and it knocked me sideways across the curbs on the inside. And I think I went back down to 4th or 5th or something like that. And from there, it was just push, push, push. I think me and Matt or maybe James tried to make a break, get back up to the lead, and then James cocked it up into the chicane on one lap, and that was it. But it was, again, just fantastic racing, and I have to say thanks to you and the guys for putting all of this together. It's such a fantastic way to spend a Monday and a Friday night.
Yeah, and obviously we're coming into the end of lockdown, hopefully, so maybe in a couple of months' time you'll be out there doing it for real. What are your plans for this year?
So my plans for this year were to not race anyway, so this is a fantastic opportunity. I'm going to hopefully get my rally license at some point this year and give rallying a bit of a go. Nothing completely committal, but just to give it a go. My mum was a rally driver when I was young, and it would be great to follow in her footsteps.
Great stuff. All right, congratulations, Steve, there. Great result in that race, and we'll see you at the next one.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
I'm not sure who else is around, Scott. Is there anyone that you fancy talking to?
If he's on a microphone, I don't know if he's in there at all or not. I'd be quite intrigued to have a chat, if he's there, to Steve Tozer to see how he found his first weekend. But I don't know if he's around on the server, if you can see him.
Doesn't look like he is, unfortunately, so we can't get him on audio.
No problem. I think in that case, in your words, we'll wrap it up there, I think, and reflect on what was an excellent couple of races. Let's quickly fill you on what's coming up next, because of course we're not done just yet, even though we do have a real calendar. There's still some racing in these series to be done. Starting with the Caterham Academy Race Series, where they head back to Snetterton, but this time they're running on the slightly more older version of the circuit, being the 200 circuit, which if you look at the layout is very much akin to how it used to be before the changes back in 2010. So that's taking place again, same time as usual, 8:30 British Summer Time on the caterhamracer.com YouTube channel, and that will be for the Academy Series. Lots of long straights, we might see lots of racing just as we did at Zandvoort once again, so that certainly should be quite a blast. It usually is a very good race at Snetterton in any of the cars, and we saw exactly that in the 420Rs a few races ago. As for the 420Rs, they will head to their penultimate races of the series, and they will head to a very hard and fast circuit. It's the Indy Circuit at Brands Hatch, this time next week on the 29th of May at 8:30 PM British Summer Time. And we'll see if the likes of Harry Senior, James Murphy, Steve McMaster, Matthew Lewis, David Rowe and co, who I'm sure will turn up, and I'm sure we'll have some more drivers in the mix who want to get involved as well. So to wrap it up then, Chris, again, another night of exceptional racing between all involved. A little bit of tit for tat between some drivers out there, which sort of added it in some elements and maybe took away in others, but on the whole I think another exciting and entertaining race evening here in the caterhamracer.com series we've come to expect over the last few weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, plenty to talk about, and I'm fairly sure that Brands Hatch Indy in the 420s is going to give us plenty to talk about as well. Really tight and twisty track. Again, you're doing laps in under a minute, so there is plenty of lappage and corners to get involved with. But yeah, it's certainly lots to talk about after that one, and I'm sure there's lots to digest for all the drivers. Hopefully the next time out as well, on Monday in the Academy Series, we'll be going to our new format. So we will have we will start the broadcast with the second race from the what we call the overflow server, but it'll be the B grid, and the winner of that B grid will actually join the back of the A grid for their racing. So we will get to see, we're larger than one grid now, so you will get to start seeing some of the races that are on our sort of overflow server.
Well, can't say no to more Caterham racing on stream, so we'll definitely look forward to that in the meantime. Again, if you are on the Academy or 420R or any of the Caterham races that we have, and not just on the motorsport side. If you're a graduate racer or somebody who has a Caterham or just wants to get involved and just wants to pit your wits, your skills against some of the best that these two series have to offer, do get in touch. caterhamracer.com. Get in touch with Chris. He'll be able to set you up with everything. There was a very handy get started guide on caterhamracer.com. So if you want to get involved, just declare your interest to Chris, and then he'll direct you there. It gives you pretty much a step-by-step process of how to get everything that you need to get yourself on the virtual racetrack in either the Academy or 420R series. Be sure to follow the series on Facebook, caterhamracer.com. Go to the website and also subscribe to the YouTube channel, as well as hitting the bell icon, which means that every time a broadcast is set to go live, you should get a notification. You can also set reminders so you get 1 to 30 minutes beforehand. From myself, Scott Woodwiss, and Chris Hutchinson, and everyone involved in the series, again, thank you so much for watching this, either live or watching back on YouTube, whenever you choose to do so. And we will see you once again for more epic Caterham racing action as the Academy cars take their turn as we head back to Stettleton on Monday. But until then, have a fantastic bank holiday weekend, and we'll see you back for some bank holiday racing on Monday in the caterhamracer.com Academy series. But until then, have a great evening, and we'll catch you then. Good night.
Good night.